Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we continue our week dedicated to the heroes of the Imperium, as we discuss the legend that is Pedro Kantor. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we are discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, I don't think I could let this week pass without talking about Pedro Kantor. Ever since the moment in Rindsworld where he bends down to pick up the mother who just can't carry her children any further, I have just loved Pedro Kantor. Right then and there, he became a legend in my eyes. Still to this day, I can't read that moment without getting chills. If by chance you don't know the moment I'm referring to, then man, do yourself a favour and pick up the novel Rindsworld by Steve Parker. Now, for all my praise for Kantor, it would be a big mistake to think that he hasn't had to make some harsh decisions. In fact, it's why I love that moment so much, because it's Kantor giving in to the human spirit inside of him. The chapter master knows it's actually the tactically wrong decision, but just standing there looking at this woman, this frail human woman, who's given every ounce of energy she has just to try and save her children. He simply just can't deny it. And really, this has been Kantor's life as a chapter master, with their homeworld of Rindsworld suffering not one, but two apocalyptic invasions. He's been forced, perhaps more than any other chapter master, to make one tough decision after another. And it's undeniable that this has had an effect on the man within, moulding the chapter master that he has become. With the invasion of War Snagrod, there are few chapter masters that have ever had to suffer the loss of over half their chapter in one devastating stroke. The moment the malfunctioning missile detonated within their fortress arsenal, Pedro Kantor was changed forever. And we have glimpsed how these scars have affected him, both the man and the chapter master. Obviously, during the events of Rindsworld itself, we saw a still young chapter master reeling, and one who, despite all the odds, managed to get his few survivors across the continent to hold out amidst the ruins of New Rin City. 10 days of guerrilla warfare against impossible odds, stubbornly refusing to submit or give in, becoming fixated on the survival of his chapter. From the outside, he became a symbol of absolute defiance, but inside, Kantor was feeling the weight of every one of those lives lost under his charge. It's interesting to consider if this is the genetic legacy of Dawn, or the spirit of the man who inherited it. Most likely it's a combination of the two. Rogel Dawn would be proud of Pedro Kantor. However, with that said, it's in the aftermath of Rindsworld's first survival that those scars became truly evident and truly shaped the chapter's future to come. With his chapter virtually extinct, most chapters in that situation would simply put out on a crusade of vengeance, selling what was left of their lives in the name of the Emperor. The mere notion of rebuilding a chapter that near to being wiped out is nothing short of a centuries-long undertaking, and in truth one that was far from certain of ever actually being achieved. But this is Pedro Kantor we're talking about, and that was exactly the challenge that Kantor undertook, determined that the legacy of the Crimson Fists would not end under his command. And we actually get a fascinating glimpse of the faults that dominate his mind during this period. as the Crimson Fists have embarked on this massive undertaking, trying to not only bring peace back to their world, but claw their chapter back from the brink of extinction. And we get to see this thanks to the short story Pedro Kantor, The Vengeful Fist, by Steve Parker. And he's actually the same author of the Rindsworld novel, so we get not only a fantastic continuation, but also an understanding of Kantor's evolution as a character. It's only a few pages long, but it's entirely from Kantor's viewpoint. And if you're a fan of Kantor's, then it's one that I really recommend, as long as you've read Rindsworld first. And what we see here is a very conflicted man. His mind is unable to shake away the events of what's transpired, unable to just look to the future ahead, because the past is so dominating his present. We see guilt that he was unable to protect the people of his world, even though he knows that there was nothing else he could have done. His chapter was ruined just as much as the world that they sought to defend. And as any human who's suffered a real, true, heart-wrenching loss, not only do you feel exactly that way, you find yourself asking just what did you do to deserve it? Why has all this happened to you? And Kantor is no different. He might not be able to mourn and grieve the same that we do, us mere mortals who are victims to our own emotions, but you understand that he truly feels this loss. And like any of us, a part of him is still struggling to come to terms with it. That a part of him still fruitlessly is seeking answers. And then, like so many people throughout history that have suffered through the actions of someone else, Kantor feels one simple overriding emotion: revenge. Kantor is dominated by revenge. Yes, he desires to rebuild what was lost, to reclaim his chapter's stature, to help the people of his world stand tall and proud once more. But underlying it all, or perhaps motivating it all, Kantor has that yearning, that burning desire to enact revenge on those responsible, the Orc warlord Snagrod. And this for me is why Pedro Kantor is such a fascinating character. He's one of the few chapter masters out there who we truly see go through real loss, go through real human emotional loss. As much as an Astartes can at least. And we see him just refuse to give in to it. We see him stand against it, literally and figuratively, coming back fighting no matter the odds. Yes, there's that Astartes revenge, but that's still a real instinctual human emotion. Kantor's story is a truly human one that all of us can look to, and in some way, find a correlation with our own lives at some point or another. Sure, we're not seeking revenge against an Orc war, well, maybe on the tabletop at least, but we've all most likely had to cope in the aftermath of a real personal loss, something that's really hurt us. And here, with this genetically enhanced chapter master, we find that inspirational story, that one that we can feel, that one that we can relate to. And well, isn't that just the beauty of 40k? But as always guys, what do you think? What do you think of the character of Pedro Kantor? Out of all the chapter masters out there, has he had to come through perhaps the largest loss, suffering not only one apocalyptic invasion of his homeworld, one that saw his chapter almost wiped out to a man, but then suffer another before his chapter had even fully rebuilt? And as devastating as those invasions were, Kantor then refused to submit, and dragged his chapter through to survival. Is Kantor's story perhaps the most inspirational one of the current 40k era? And of all the Sons of Dawn, does he perhaps typify best the unrelenting defiance of their Primarch? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you as always to my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.